All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Margaux Wagenmann. It's January 27th, 2020. We're at the Nicholson Library at Linfield College. Margaux, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the most important question of all. Why wine?
I always feel like, why not? It's so good. I'm really fortunate. My family started a wine distributor back in 1973. So it was my father, Greg Lema, and my grandfather, Albert, and his brother, or my father's brother, Philip. So the three of them started wine distribution in 1973, and it took off. He did a really beautiful job of bringing in imports, being some of the first to bring in, Aldo Conterno and GD Vira and all these gorgeous wineries that are now, mainstays in the industry. He was the first to bring in like stag leaf wine cellars from California back when that crazy 70s thing. So it's really cool, like the history. So but I didn't really wrap my head around that until I was in college, and that's when I really fell in love with wine. I loved it. I knew I wanted to help my dad out in the industry, and I wanted to help him out with his company. But he took me on right after I graduated from college. It was a term early from U of O in 2006, and he took me to Vin Italy, which is this crazy wine fair where it's like 9 warehouses of everything in Italy, like wine related, including grappa, one whole thing of grappa, which was intense. So we did this whole tour, and it blew my mind. I loved it. Our first stop when we got into Italy was Produttori del Barbaresco, and that's where it clicked that you could have the same grape planted in 9 different vineyards, and the only differences between these vineyards are maybe slightly different exposure, maybe there's 2 different soil types, like just 2 tiny little nuances, including these 2 vineyards that you just walk across the road from each other. And then we went back to the winery and tasted them all, and that was it. I was done. Like I already knew I liked it, but I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. And there's just this one little tiny plot of land, like that means the whole world is like that. That's so cool. So it just kind of kept going.
Tell me about the keep going. So tell me about what you were doing at Lima. Like, what was your initial role there?
Yeah, so I graduated from U of O with a focus on business and Spanish, so I did a double major in that. And the business school, I focused on decision sciences, which at the time was the school's way of like putting together anything IT related in the business world. They didn't know, it was 2004, 5, 6. So I did everything from, I took classes on supply chain management, database management, website development, data mining, things like that. And I really liked the supply chain management classes. My dad was like, oh, thank God, because actually I was going to offer you if you wanted to be the buyer. I was like, sweet, that sounds great. So we did that. So I got to work with him very closely for about 1.5 years in that position. Helping him bring in DI orders, working closely with the local wineries, working closely with the wineries out of California, Washington, Oregon, and then a lot of importers that would stock their product in East Coast and California. So like coordinating shipments and getting them all here. So it's cool to see that aspect. And then my sister Pilar is a fantastic salesperson. She was a sales manager at the time at Lema, and she was awesome. My little sister Lucia was going to join the company. They were trying to figure out exactly what we should all be doing and what's our future roles here, and kind of doing planning. And Pilar was like, "You should do sales." I was like, "Oh no." I was really anti-sales in the beginning, so it took her a little bit, but she was great. She was right. I should do sales, so I did it. The first year, I thought it was the worst decision I'd ever made in my life. I thought it was horrible. I didn't, there's a lot of rejection along with all the positivity, so that was hard for me to manage. I was also really not nearly as social as as I now am. So it was hard for me to kind of break that barrier, but I did. And after a year, to the date, I remember just being like, oh, this is so much fun. And just running with it and meeting all these people. And then those people refer me to other people. So I ended up having anywhere between 80 to 120 or 330 customers at a time that I'd manage and take care of. So I would start off with a really entry-level sales route. I took care of Mount Hood, which was definitely different. Timberline's an awesome account, but everything outside of that's much more introductory. Gresham, back then there was a little wine shop that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And then I took care of Hood River. I serviced Hood River as a sales rep for almost 10 years. And I loved that place. That was every single Friday, going out there and just selling wine. That was, I did was into the wine world and sales and stuff. And then eventually took over the John Gorham Restaurant Group, managing that, the McMenamins, working closely with Sean, and working with Joel Gunnarsson. At the he now owns Cooper's Hall, and he's doing such an amazing job. I knew him back when he was in New Seasons, as an assistant over at Progress Ridge. It's been amazing by being a sales rep that you end up knowing all these awesome people. the people that we all have the same joy and like love over wine. You know, alcoholic beverages in general, honestly. Yeah, Teardrop Lounge, I used to had the bartending, in the bartending world, I used to try to help as many bartenders, try to get them to understand sherry. So that was my big, yes, I was really pro sherry back when sherry was like, oh, I don't know about this. So Lustau sherry, and that's really thanks to Daniel Shoemaker for getting Lustau out there and presenting it to the Oregon Bartenders Guild. And then from that point off, sherry really took off, which was really cool to see. Lustau was that perfect little like price point quality. It was like a slam dunk, so it was just, that spread really quickly. And it's been beautiful to see that open the doors for other amazing producers like Fernando de Castilla, which is like my favorite cherry producer, which maybe that should be cut out, I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, yeah, still love the stuff, but yeah, Fernando's really great. Yeah, so it's just evolved.
So tell me about the actual sales part of it. Were you selling to distributors? Were you selling to consumers? Were you selling to restaurants?
Restaurants and retailers, yeah. So anyone with an OLCC license. So after selling as a sales rep for a long time, I became assistant sales manager. Like the last 3 years I was at Lemma Wine Company. I left January of 2018, right? Yeah, January 2018. Feels like last year, but it was 2 years ago, which is crazy. So those last couple of years there, I helped manage the New Seasons chain stores. So that was having an understanding of what consumers needed, always being on top of what consumers wanted and liked in the market, in addition to being able to understand like how do you sell to them. But now I'm selling to like a massive buyer. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool to get to know. And at the time that was Hillary Renshaw. She was Hillary, what's her name? She definitely edited that, don't say Renshaw. Shoot, what's her name? Anyways, Hillary is awesome. She was the head buyer for all New Seasons at that time. And she's an awesome woman. She really helped shape how New Seasons and help them grow the entire time. She was really cool to work with. Yeah, so a little bit of everything. So I kept always like those key accounts, those restaurants mainly. But because I had basically handled all the New Season stores at one point, and I knew all the stewards, I was able to also use that knowledge to like make pitches to the head buyers who then would filter down to the stores.
Tell me about that aspect of it. The New Seasons obviously is a big deal for especially small producers in the area. So tell me about how that works from, obviously the smaller producers need all the help they can get. They need the places to, so how does New Seasons work with that? How did you work with New Seasons to get people on the shelf?
Oh man, so a lot of it is just being able to be educated enough and knowledgeable enough, and it's all about timing. Understanding when the buyers in like, all the New Season stewards were like, man, I can't find, I don't know, let's say a good off-white blend from a local producer. Like I just don't have, like people are out of stock of it. That's when you immediately contact the head buyer. You're like, hey, you should turn this wine on. I have samples. I can drop it off today. Like you just, it's all about timing and being really reactionary quickly. I also took the time to really get an understanding. I would talk to the stewards and I would then ask Hillary, like, so I'm hearing that there's a need for this. Like on our next appointment, can we do this? Can we taste these wines? I would also be really just asking a lot of questions, like what are you in need of right now? And so she'd give me a list, and so hopefully that would fit a lot of local category, and then I'd pitch those wines into her. There's also the edge of wine demos, which is kind of how my current business starts, which is there's always, the local wine rack's awesome for wine demos. You guys are always doing them in stores. So when there's a local winery, for example, Coeur de Terre, I knew that there was only like the Pinot Gris or something like that authorized. And so I pitched her, I was like, you should do the Pinot Noir too. And the reason, like, what about these other ones? Because we're doing wine demos and it'd be nice to have the whole lineup, not just that one wine that's authorized. So there's different kind of sales tactics you can kind of use depending on the winery and if they're already known, or like, just kind of all depends. I like to filter things out and like do a very fine-tuned pitch versus just being like, who wants this wine and how many people want it? Like it's good to like be very analytical about who it is you're selling to and what do you have that you can offer them, instead of taking the approach of like, I have this one thing I need to like sell it to everyone. I like that fine-tuned approach more. Yeah.
How did it change for you from when you started at Lemma to when you were through that transition? How did it get harder to place? Did it get harder to sell?
Absolutely. The market became way more competitive. I mean, Lemma, Galaxy, and then at the time it was just Young's. I don't even know if it was Young's. I think it was just Columbia back then. Like, McClaskey's. Those were awesome mainstay wine distributors. And then more and more kept coming. And then, Petit Mon has done such a good job. PDX Wine has done such a good job. Casa Bruno's fantastic. Like, there's all these really great Casa Brino's been there also for so long. Like it's been so nice to have all these like mainstays, but then you had all these little guys pop up, and all those that's expanded tremendously, along with consolidation at the top. So when Lemma closed, I know that there was all these major changes in the industry on top of Lemma closing. So it was nuts. Like I was actually very happy to not be fully immersed in it, because it just sounded like it was chaos, and brands switching over, distributors all the time, and people and distributors growing really, really quickly, and that's also a hard thing to tackle. Just so much change all at once, and it's still apparently changing, and it's a lot. Like I don't know 100% what the future will be like for the wine distribution industry. If those, I'm a huge supporter of these small distributors and how many there are. I think there's like 70 licensed distributors in Oregon, and that's a good thing, I think, because that encourages diversity. And ideally that encourages sales reps who are knowledgeable about their portfolio, and they don't have, when you have like thousands of brands under your book, like some of the bigger boys do, that's a hard nut to keep track of. It's a lot. Like Lemma was big enough. I felt like once you were there for a year or two, like you could get a good understanding if you really wanted to geek out. So that takes time too, but in a good way. So we'll see how it changes. I don't know. It's Oregon Pinot Noir used to be really easy to sell, I feel like, and now it's like everyone, their mother has one for under $15. Wholesale. That's wholesale. So it's a lot harder. There's a lot less. I'm not seeing as brand loyalty kind of change. I think when I started in sales around, probably with 0809 vintage is when I saw a much quicker switch into brands. Like you weren't seeing a glass pour of the same Pinot Noir for a year straight, or even like a full 6 months straight. It switched to being like, what's the next new thing? And this thing's on a good deal, so I'm going to switch to that and that and that. And they meet a new winemaker and be like, oh my God, I love that person, I'm going to put their product on. So it's constantly shifting. And I think as a buyer, I commend them for doing such a great job, because I think being a restaurant buyer or being a retail buyer, it's hard to like, I'd have a horrible time. I'd say yes to everything. I'd say, oh my God, I want that and I want that, and this all sounds really good. Like it'd be hard for me. So it's a hard thing to do. Yeah.
What did you hear from producers during that time as things were changing? As we hear a lot from the producer side, there used to be a lot of distributors and not that many wineries, and then that kind of flip-flopped. What did you hear from them as you were working with them through those years?
Oh man, that's a good question. It was more like how there was a lot more strategizing as to how to make my brands, my wine stand out in the crowd. The story became much more important, and having staff education became much more important. So it was more about the story and the quality and keeping up with the quality every year. It put a lot more stress on the producer, I think, to make quality wine year after year. You can't mess up. And price points became a much harder play. Like when that 07 vintage came, and with the bad press that came along with it, suddenly people were dropping prices. And that was really one of the first times that you saw a large quantity of wine out there that wasn't being sold, and that suddenly was being marketed towards, which I thought was the best way to do it, glass pours. And getting it moved through that way, because then you're selling several cases a week versus having it sit on the shelf. Let's say you dropped on the price to $10 to $13, so it's at $20 to $20 retail. That'll sell, but glass pours is when people are just going through much more stock. So then you went after displays. You had to drop off the price off lower if it wasn't really selling, and that totally screwed up the market, I think. And you had bulk juice going out suddenly. You had all these second labels suddenly explode. So second labels, pricing, that changed a lot of the, I think, especially Oregon Pinot Noir game. It made it be, not only did it make it more popular in consumers' mind, which that was a good thing, but it made it much more of a game where it was like, what's next and how do I position this besides just price point, that's a hard game to play, price point. Fussing with it, yeah.
You mentioned story becoming more important. I'm curious, what's the story that worked? What did you find people were able to sell? Oh man,
being genuine and just saying this is why I'm making the wine that I'm making, and this is where it comes from, and this is why I chose my place, and this is why I work with this vineyard. You look at Beckham and how many people work that fruit. That story is beautiful. Like what they're doing is beautiful. It's really cool, and so it's cool to like. I never worked with them, but I already have a deep appreciation for them just because of the stories I've heard through other people. That's huge.
Did you find people at that time who didn't have a story and fell away, like faded away?
There's a couple.
You don't have to name any names. Yeah. I'm just sort of curious.
There is definitely one brand where it was hard. Like I think they were trying to find their story, and if the owners are doing it because they have a lot of money and they're just like, oh, let's just, great. This sounds like a nice retirement thing. It's like, that's your story. That's not the greatest story. Let's find another story. So it's hard to, to understanding that. But the people who maybe, there's also examples of really great business owners and winemakers that were retired and they had this great, stash of money. So they're like, why not? And it's because they really wanted to do it. And that works because they really want to do it. And then they get geeky and passionate about it and they, it's good. It's good. But if you're in it for the money, it's not, it's a much harder thing to sell. Yeah, and then you're going after, hopefully, press, because then they're going after the press, and that's one way to play it that way, but it's not as, for me, it wasn't as fun. Like, if you're just focusing on press, and it's like, okay, that's nice, good job, but that's like one person's palate, like, saying that you're a good winery. I'm not a huge press lady. Stephen Tanzer to me was the only one that I could be like, oh, good, like that descriptor matches mine, so I can follow you, like that makes sense for me, but outside of that, I was always like, I don't know, where'd you get those candied apricots? But sure. Yeah.
I'm curious about that aspect of it too, since you came into the industry with an appreciation of wine as a consumer. Yeah. Tell me about the education process for yourself, learning all the brands, learning all the varietals, learning all the regions.
Yeah, I always tell people the best way to learn is just to try everything. Just keep drinking, like literally. Just keep tasting anything you possibly can. Be responsible about it. Spit, do it with food. But just make use of all those opportunities. I got really lucky that, I came from a family who liked wine, so I was able to, since I was a young kid, taste different wines. I didn't exactly recognize what I was doing until I was older, and I was like, oh, that's great, I know what this wine is, and I know what this is. No, that tastes like that. Like, it was kind of fun to not, my parents were never pushy. They didn't make us want to, do anything. They were always like, what do you want to do? And hopefully, if you want to work with us, that would be great. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. What do you want to do though? So I feel very fortunate that my education was very natural and very organic, and maybe a little bit more old school. Like I'm not WSET certified or anything. I haven't taken formal classes. I just strongly believed in listening to people and understanding those individual stories and those individual wineries, and taking copious amounts of notes that one day I will take pictures of and upload to my Google Drive and transfer everything digitally one day.
Awesome.
It's going to be great. I have a stack of books of notes. Really need to do that. So, yeah, I think just tasting and learning and traveling, which now is, I understand, more expensive, and it's harder to get those expensive wines. I mean, think about Burgundy and Champagne, First Gross. Like, how are you supposed to be able to taste those anymore? Back in the day, it was easier. You had like places like Martinotti's that you can get. The quality might be questionable because the storage wasn't the greatest there. However, like, they had an amazing library of wines. So now I tell people to go to Weiser's in Lake Oswego because that stash is awesome. Weiser's has such an amazing array of library vintages, both local and international and domestic. They're an awesome source, I think. So if you really want to learn about wine, that's a good place to go for sure. And then taking advantage of places like Liner Nelson and Park Avenue and mom and pop, like going to your local wine shop and getting an understanding from them and learning from these people, because these people own those wine shops for a reason, and they're doing a beautiful job in the industry for a reason. They're just, they're really doing great.
So tell me about the company you have now. Tell me about what drove you to start the Margaux and Co. and when.
Yeah. So about a couple months before beginning 2018. So let's see. Ultimately, my husband and I, we have one sweet daughter, Lucia. She was born May 29th, 2015. She's great vintage too. That's cool. She's gonna have a great wine collection at the age of 21. But we were planning on having a second baby, but I was looking at my life and my schedule, and like, I was used to working anywhere between 5 to 7 days a week, long hours. I would drop off my daughter at daycare as early as 6:30 and pick her up as late as 4:30. Like, it wasn't the ideal schedule as a mama, and I knew I wanted to change, and so we were looking into like maybe different daycare programs, everything, but the math just never penciled out. It would have been over $2,400, $2,200 at the cheap end a month for 2 kids to be in daycare full time, which is ridiculous. And as we know, the wine industry isn't like at that fantastic level of paying everyone like massive quantities of money to afford that. So it was just, my take home would have been really small, and I had to make a choice. So I did, which was a really hard choice, to tell my parents sorry and to back out of that. So that was really hard, but I did it. And my son was due March 12th, 2018. He was 3 weeks early. So that was totally shocking. We're totally right on track, and just decided to come out one day. So and he really changed my life. Like, I knew I wanted to leave the wine company to start a new life and be more family focused. But he was born with Down syndrome, so that totally changed everything for me. It made me realize, I had to make even more changes in my life. So if you back up to January right before he was born, I was super pregnant, and I thought it'd be a really great idea too, because I was a little stir crazy too. I needed to get out like at least once a week, just doing something. I was used to making money and like doing stuff and like constantly. So to be suddenly have like no plans other than like how to take care of my daughter every day, which was awesome, but it was also like, how do we hang out all the time? It was so adorable. I'll never forget her like the third day in, and she was just like, you're here every day? I was like, I am every day. And in my head I was like, oh my God, every day. Okay.
I need some adult time here.
I know. I was like, I need adult time. So I reached out to some wineries. Patrick Taylor came to his feast. He's awesome. Corey Terre, Scott and Lisa Neal, Oloro, Tom and David are fantastic. Byron Dooley, Seven of Hearts, Luminous Hills, like those guys were my first customers. They're like, oh yeah, can you go do demos? Like that would be great. Cause I told them like, just whenever you need any labor, I know you guys are always looking for somebody to like pour wine somewhere. So I can help you with that, why not? And that became more of a service where they were just like, we were doing these 3-hour demos, and then it kind of came this thing like, well, I can book it because I know all the new season stewards, so I can just book it for you, and that way you guys don't have to worry about that either, about your sweet things. So that was cool where that just kind of happened. So within a month I was like, oh, I'm busy, this is great. And then I was like, oh God, I'm really pregnant though. So when Lincoln came out 3 weeks early, like I actually had a demo like that weekend, and I had to ask my sister if she could sub in, and then I asked my buddy Joshua Chang, he's a great photographer, like him, and Amanda Demand, she's a great cheesemonger over at New Seasons now, or Co. She's wonderful. So these people were kind of my backups as work came in that I was like, I can't do it. Well, it's not possible, actually. Just had a baby. Sorry, totally overcommitted. I had really grand plans. So they helped me out. They really, really were awesome. And then the work requests kept coming in, but that first month of Lincoln's life was really rough. Like we were at the hospital multiple times a week, like if not every day, trying to figure that out. So when the test came back positive that he did have Down syndrome, we're like, okay, well, we're prepared now, because like you literally spend the first 2 weeks of that processing and also getting all this information, which for Randall and I is good. Like we love the information. We will take it and like be like, okay, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed, and I get that, but for us it was great to be like, okay, so this is like Down syndrome kids don't live now until they're 40. They actually live until they're over 60. It's amazing. Like we learned so much about Down syndrome, and we learned that there's all these support systems through that. So then I was like, oh, we're good. We're fine. It'll be okay. Like, it's great. So we felt more comfortable with it. So I knew I wanted to start a company. I was planning on doing it in 2019, like January 2019. But Lincoln started sleeping through the night. So around May, June, I was like, I think I could do this. So I think it was 2 solid months of him sleeping through the night, roughly. So I was like, oh, I'm feeling great. Because, you go from like sleep deprivation to like suddenly feeling like $1 million when you're sleeping all the time. He was such a chill, awesome little dude. Like even with all the therapies we go to, it was like, oh, I have time. This is great. So yeah, I don't know what I was thinking either. So July 1st, I started my company. My husband was really sweet. I came home and I was like, I was doing research and it's really easy. So I did it. And he was just like, oh, I was like, I know. I love you a lot. I was like, it'll be small, don't worry. And so Lincoln really prompted that, like all those life changes. I knew that if I started my company, I could have a completely flexible schedule. I knew that I could work from home. Ideally, by starting a company, I wouldn't be the one doing all the pouring. Other people would do the pouring. I could train them, educate them. I could coordinate winery visits so that way people understood the wineries like I did. And then they could properly talk about them. Wineries were awesome for being so supportive of that. Like my customer base started growing. I sent out a text, I think the second week of July, being like, okay guys, I'm ready. Like who else wants to do this? Like just wine demos. I could pay, I think at the time it was like 15 to 25 an hour is what I had worked out with all the wineries. With local wineries, I was just telling them like, how much can you pay? And let's just figure it out. And I'll just take like a $15 finer fee, don't worry. But like, I want those guys to make the money. And that's still how my company is based, in that I want my pourers to make the money, because they're the ones who are doing all the work. They're really the ones that are like they're the front and center people. They're awesome. So yeah, that just all blew up from like 10 people to like, by the end of 2018, it was closer to 20 people and 5 times as many customers. And then since then, it's just kind of snowballed. So I'm now at 58 pours on my team, and I have well over 50 customers. I forgot to count before going here, but it's awesome. It's because of all those years in the industry and having all these connections, and getting people to, like, people know that I really care, which is cool. So it's been good. So Margaux and Co is really a hub connecting people. I have 57 people that are all their friends or friends of friends. They're connected through some ways. I have now people that are friends of friends of friends, which I'll take it. I love it. I'd rather have this natural organic growth. And the wine industry, we talked a little bit about pay. Like, that's, some people need extra money, especially with living expenses going up so dramatically high. Like, I don't know how you guys do rent, honestly. Oh, like, it's crazy. I'm just floored by how much rent is these days. When I graduated college, I think you could get a place for like $200 a month. It's easy.
My first apartment was like $375 a month.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Those were the glory days.
I know. We could do it. We could still buy wine on the side. Like now it's like, how are you supposed to pay rent and pay your bills and do everything? And start a family. You're supposed to start a family and do all that stuff. And do your lifelong dream of like wine. Like, that costs money. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So I like that I'm helping people get some extra income. Now I'm at the, like, if you're doing tasting room support, it's a minimum of $18 an hour. If you're doing demos, I can pay $25 to $33 an hour. I got wineries to go up more, which is awesome. And it's three-hour demos of work, but you're making $75 to over $100, hopefully, like as much as you want to. And it's all, everyone works as often or as little as they want, which that's my biggest challenge, is trying to manage that. Like, making sure I always have somebody available. Like, I feel like I always have enough, and then like the last 3 months of last year, it was like I constantly had demos that I had to be like, I'm sorry, I can't fill it. So I was constantly adding in more people to keep up with that. So that's kind of how I gauge my needs, is like, if I reach a point where I have demos that I can't fill, that means I need more people. If I have too many people and not enough demos, that means like, okay, I'm good with people. Focus on the customers. Like, do that. So it's been really nice to be able to like juggle that and work it out.
How did you see the need? So it sounds like what you're filling the need that the wineries can't staff, basically. They don't have enough staff to go out and do demos or to fill the tasting room staff. So was that a need that you had just noticed over the years, or was it something that kind of came to you? Or
I noticed it over the years, and I didn't realize how big of a need it was until I started helping that January. That was intense. And then I noticed that, distributors being how big they are and how busy they are, and even being a sales rep, in traffic, you're spending more time on the road than sometimes seeing customers. It's hard. So how are you expected to book all these events and do all this stuff and remember to follow up with the customer and remember to do all this stuff? Like, it's a lot to juggle. So I knew that it could be a help for those companies that wanted to see that, not only is it a help to their sales reps, like Handcrafted has been awesome. They see it as a great service, and I love them for working really closely with me through the wineries that they represent. And then the wineries see it as a big service because they're like, great, you can talk to the distributor, or sometimes it's just they funnel the information. I'm really flexible. I like to figure out whatever works out for each winery, which I recognize probably in a couple of years I might have to be more streamlined, because right now it's like all these different ways of communicating, which I can handle, but I'm like, it's a lot of different ways of communicating. Really good note taker, and I have really great Excel spreadsheets. It's kind of that's the secret. That's it. So if I book the demo, I do all the event planning, everything. It's the wineries love that they're like, okay, great, I don't have to worry about that. You've just taken care of it. Just tell me what they're pouring. I'll even finalize the lineup. Sometimes stewards want to finalize the lineup with the distributor, and that's fine as long as it gets conveyed to me within a week before the demo, ideally. Because my big focus, again, is education and getting those people to pour wine that they know about the wines. So I'll send them the winery website link. I'll send them like winery backgrounders, fact sheets, things like that. I'm always shocked when there's wineries that are like, they don't have fact sheets. I'm like, how do you not have fact sheets? Like, how am I supposed to talk about your wines? I need the gritty details, like technical data, all the geeky stuff on top of the consumer-related stuff. It has to be like really well balanced. If you don't have that, then it makes it really hard for someone to talk about. So, Where are we at? You should tell me.
When you talk about demos, give me an example of what exactly you mean by it. So demos for a distributor or demos for consumers?
For the consumers.
Okay.
So basically, like for example, if someone hires me to book the demo and coordinate it with new season stewards, I'll call the steward or email them, depending on the new season steward's preference. Or sometimes I even go physically stop by. I say, hey, so-and-so once hired me to, pour Union Co wines or Seven Hearts or whatever. Ideally, that winery and or distributor, whoever's paying for me to do this work, has given me a list of everything that's on their shelf. It's helpful when it's really accurate. So that's one hiccup. Sometimes you're like, really outdated info. And so you can go with the steward and say, I know you have this and this and this on the shelf, like let's pour it, what day is good for you? And they'll say, oh yeah, sure, no problem, this day, this time. Great, and ideally it's that cut and dry. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a brand trying to increase their footprint in new seasons, for example. So they only have 1 or 2 SKUs in each of the stores. So this is an opportunity for them to increase the number of SKUs. Or some wineries like to team up, and so we can do like dual demos, and that cuts the cost for them. So that's also good for them too. So we can, for the holidays, that was a big part of my focus in the holidays 2018 when I first started, was doing like these themed tastings. So it was like Northwest wineries, and then they could pick from all these different wineries that were paying me to book demos. And then I tell them, okay, stewards have picked your wines, 1 out of the 6 wines is yours, 2 of the 6 wines or whatever, and I break down the cost accordingly. And that was really fun. But on the steward side, I think it gets confusing because then they're working with all these different distributors for one demo. So we made it a lot more simpler in 2019, where I did a lot more just winery-focused demos. The shared demos, every once in a while, it's fun to do it, and it works well, I think, with local wineries that are under the same book. So handcrafted is really great for that. But if it's not in the same book, I tend to try to say, like, let's do winery-focused. It's hard. It'll be a little hard to do that. And then there's regional focuses like Ribera del Duero, Rueda demos that I did. I coordinated for this really awesome woman named Sarah Howard. She's the head of the DO marketing side of it. So she had money to spend in Oregon for demos, so I was able to book all of those for her. And then I'll be doing Garnacha demos for her for the next couple of years, hopefully, which will be awesome. So there's all these like little niches I can fill by helping people get connected. Is what the common thread is, what I'm finding with all of it. So now I just need to define that in a fancier way. Put that on my website, because I get a lot of questions about like, what do you do? I'm like, demos and tasting rooms were like staffing, but not really. Like legally, it's demo companies. Like, so it's a different type of demo company. People don't really book all that stuff, so it's a little bit unique.
We were all kind of excited to figure it out ourselves, which is why all the questions here.
No, it's good.
But I appreciate this is interesting. I'm curious the feedback you're getting from, especially from the client and from the winery end, as are you having the success selling the wine that they're hoping you would? So
far, so good. Like I send them the there's always feedback forms after each demo. So they're getting all the nitty gritty, even when it's not a good demo. Like let's say they only sold 6 or 7 bottles, which that's lame. That sucks. It's not a good demo. So if they're doing that, I make sure the pour says why. Like what happened? Were the price points too high? Was it raining and you're selling rosé? It's not a good combo. There's all these different reasons as to like why. Because sometimes it just stinks. I've had demos where I sell less than a case and it stinks. You're just like, how did I spent 3 hours and I poured 40 people and I sold 9 bottles. This is ridiculous. Sometimes people just aren't in a buying mood, so they'll take more pictures of the label, which is good. That means they're going to come back. So that's fine. But it's hard for me to be able to gauge the success of those lower, like at the time sales, because it depends on how the distributor's doing those follow-up orders. And if the sales rep doesn't catch, like let's say we only sold 9 bottles, but 6 bottles were of this one wine, so now the shelf is out or whatever. Ideally, there's more stock than that on the shelf, and then the back stock. But if I sell the wine, the sales rep doesn't catch it, then that means there's no reorder. So that stinks for the brand. So it's a really tight partnership that I'm trying to foster between having very open and frank communications with the distributors and or the winery, whoever's paying for me. I try to be really honest if like someone messed up and the order didn't come through, and sometimes it just happens. That's the part of the distribution industry I can relate to. I'm like, sorry. It happens, but if people are quick reacting and they can sub in product or they can keep me updated, then we're good to go. That's not a problem. But so far the feedback has been really good. I don't think I keep asking for negative feedback, and so far there hasn't been many other than like more sales reports, but I don't have access to that information, so I can't provide that. So that makes me, I wish I could. I'd love to have access to those numbers, but I don't. Yeah.
Tell me about finding pourers and about finding your employees. What are you looking for in someone to work for you?
Someone who's who cares. I feel like when you meet people, I like to do personal one-on-one interviews. Very worst case, it'll be on the phone. And I'll ask them certain questions like, what are their favorite wines? What do they like to do? What have they done before in their past jobs? You know, just because you're really good in the restaurant side of things doesn't mean you necessarily could transfer to the retail side. You know, in the end, if you're really amiable, you really care, you're passionate, you may not even have the best wine knowledge, but if you really care and you want to learn and geek out, we're gonna do great. And so maybe the people with lesser wine knowledge, I'll start them off with more introductory demos. I help sell now everything from like Gallo brands, thanks to Tucker, who's awesome, to like Drinkero and Deutsche Family Estates, along with all the local wineries. So that allows me to have a balanced amount of work for everyone and be able to help a broader range of people as well. I like something I learned from my parents that I thought was always really important, to be very, you know, don't just focus on the little guys. The big guys, it's not just because they're big doesn't mean they're bad. It's just like, you know, just like anyone else. Are these good people to do business with? Are they good people? So that's what I focus on.
And how do you go about finding that part out? I'm curious, when you're looking for clients, how do you gauge someone you want to work with?
Organization is really important. So if they're not organized right off the bat, I'm like, let's just stick to the fill and pour service. I can't do organized demos for you. Like, and I'll be honest when I'm like, it's too much for me. And then there's others that are awesome, like really right off the bat. It's like easy. It's just, you just fill in and they send you over the spreadsheet and you say no problem, and then you just send in the people and it's seamless. It's really nice. Finding new clients. I was going to a lot of like more trade events last year, and then I would reach out to distributors and friends and contacts and things that I had. So things just kind of have built up so quickly from that I'm now just trying to manage all of it and trying to do all of that. And because the core of Margaux and Co is really being a connecting point between people and people who need people, I've been able to support Matt Plitch. He owns Neutral, which is a carbon neutral focused products. He's starting with dairy products, which is really cool. So we're doing milk demos in stores. And I was honest with him in that, like, there's wine. We have a Freem beer team. I do a little bit of beer just because it's, the alcohol situation. And it all started with Yetta over at Crooked Stave. She's a friend of mine, and so her and her husband own Crooked Stave Brewery, and she convinced me to do demos for her. And I was like, well, okay, I'm already doing demos. Okay, yes, I'll say yes to Frame. And thanks to Kristen, one of my team members, she knew someone at Frame, so it just all kind of connected. So that happened, and then Matt got a hold of me through another recommendation to somebody else, which came from New Seasons. I really love New Seasons. So Matt connected me. He was really gung-ho. He was like, I really want you guys. And I was like, well, we're alcoholic beverage industry. Like, milk's a whole different product. It's grocery store. It's different types of consumers. Like, I mean, now there's these non-milk drinkers. Like, how do we, He's like, we'll figure it out. I was like, okay. I mean, he's so passionate about what he's doing, and I love what he's doing, that I was like, okay, we can do this. Let me see if I have people that want to do this, though, because I can't be personally doing these demos. I don't normally pour as much anymore. But for him, I was like, I'll do at least a couple a month, because I think what he's doing is really important for the environment. So that, luckily, I had 5 people right off the bat that wanted to do it. But that shows you from the team, like, I have over 50 people, and I have 5 people that want to do milk demos, and that's fine as long as he's fine with that. So, and since then, it's kind of expanded. I think about 7 or 8 now. It's only been a couple weeks. We started doing demos, and then last week I helped Southern launch these CBD products in Ross stores, and that again came from my friend Tucker, who recommended me, and it just kind of all happened. But thanks to Rhonda, who's exceptional, she's been in the industry for a while. She was in the wine industry for a long time. She was at New Seasons before that, and then she ended up getting into the CBD worlds, and then she left it, and now she works here for me here and there. And she was like, I can do it. I was like, okay, great. Can anyone else do it? And sure enough, there's like 8 people who are like, I love CBD products. Yes. So I was like, great, you guys are passionate about it. Let's do this. So we, as with anything new, we did a staff education. With the CBD, it was, online, virtual. They did this whole scientific breakdown. This is how you sell everything. So we could, as a team, know what we're talking about, geek out about it once again. And then with Neutral, it was more one-on-one. Matt's really personal, which I appreciate. So he likes more one-on-one interactions, and so he can tell someone, like, really face to face, like, this is what I'm doing. So And then they rock it. They do good because they're set up for success, hopefully.
So you started with wine, and now you're into milk and beer and CBD.
Yeah,
is there a logical end to this, or is it just anything people want?
I feel like as long as there's people that I have on the team that want this work, then why would I deny it? I feel like that wouldn't be fair. Like, my whole point of Margaux and Co was to be a connecting point. That was what I wanted to do in the wine industry, and then it kind of branched into the beer industry, and then now it's like officially this year it's like the milk and the CBD. And I'm like, well, I mean, why should it stop? Like, if I have people that really want to do it and are passionate about it, why not? So in my head, it's like, well, why not? I always ask myself, why not? And if there's not a good enough reason, then it's like, well, then I guess I should do it. Worst case, you back out. You say, whoopsie, sorry. Which ideally, I don't. So far, I haven't had to, so I feel lucky about that.
You mentioned being a connecting point as sort of the core of what you're doing. How would you describe your philosophy for Margaux and Co? Is it that? Is it more than that?
After Assemblage Symposium, I want it to be more than that. I realized that there's so many fantastic people in the wine industry, but just in the world in general. Like, there's awesome people to be connected to. So I want to implement a mentorship program, or at least refer them to a mentorship program. There's someone I'm talking to this week she wants to start educational classes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do more formal blind tastings and things for my staff. I just haven't had the time for it. So maybe I have you do that. Like, maybe I just connect everyone to you. So I would love to branch off that, like give people more opportunities to learn, not just through the brands that we're working with, but just in general, whether it be wine, spirits, beer. I think my goal is to have always a special focus on wine because I love the wine industry, but I can't deny that there's other industries that need support as well. There's no demo company that really cares 100% and has such a large team of dedicated people that want to care. And that's what, like, if I can keep doing that, then why not?
You mentioned Assemblage. Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
That was amazing. That was absolutely incredible. Like, I'm sure you can agree. Like, it was just, I was never really pro, like, all women, I was always like, I mean, let's all love each other. Like, I'm just not into this whole, like, separating things out. I really believe in, like, just everyone working together. That should be the root of it. But in the end, that is the root of it. I went there not sure exactly what to expect, but Siobhan Marie and Stacey Gibson, I knew were going. If they were involved, then I knew I wanted to go for sure. And then when I started hearing more about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. This is going to be so interesting. And some of these women going, like Elaine Chugga Brown and Carrie from Little Green Pickle. I mean, they're amazing. They're people I've admired for a long, long time, especially Carrie from Little Green Pickle. She's awesome. So I couldn't say no. I felt like that was such a great learning opportunity. And I think it was like by lunchtime, I was totally smitten. I thought this was like the most amazing thing ever. And there was all these people I hadn't seen in a long time that they were there. And it was just another way to connect with people. And I felt like Assemblage was a great way to do that, where you're just connecting everyone, like all these awesome people. Not to say there's people there that didn't want to get connected. There's definitely a few women that I met that I was like, oh, okay, you're not. It's fine. You have other goals that you're here for. That's fine. You don't want to talk. No problem. Talk to this other person. Like, but it was inspiring. It made me feel like just like we can do so. Everyone is capable of so much more. If we just talk about it, which has been my focus for the last 2 years, and myself personally, it's just like, what are you capable of, and how you can be the best person you can be, and still always have balance. Because I was really happy to have a work-life balance. So, yeah, Assemblage was amazing. And Siobhan Marie in particular, with that last speech she did, like, it was awesome. She's great. She's really good. Yeah.
So obviously, part of the point of Assemblage is that there are more women in wine now, and there are more opportunities needed that are needed. I'm curious. Your part of the industry, especially, is fairly male-dominated. Distribution, sales, marketing, fairly male-dominated part of the industry in general. Tell me about your work in that and how it has been for you getting into it.
Well, that's a good question. Before I forget, I should say that like Margaux and Co is mainly women, which I thought was interesting. And I think that
was my next question. Thank you.
Okay. It's kind of tied in, sort of. I think a lot of it has to do with and this is kind of where I'm going to go with it too. Pay is the pay difference is really difficult to deal with as a woman. It's really hard to hear about men who get paid more than you for the same type of work. It's really hard, and I do, from my perspective, I felt like for me personally, it was because I need to ask more. I need to be more upfront. I need to be more aggressive. I need to be more like, no, this is what I want to do. Let's do this. Like, I need to be not so shy when I say, you know what, my service just went, like this year I raised my prices for Margaux and Co, some of the services, and I felt like I had to. I was looking at my costs and my time. I was like, no, I'm just going to do it. Like, if people don't want it, then it's not going to, maybe then they'll know that at least this is my cap. I did do a couple feelers with customers that I really wanted to make sure that they would still stick with it. And they were like, oh gosh, of course, it's great. I was like, great, perfect. Don't be shy, be brave. Just go for it. Like, and as a woman, I think that's hard for us to innately be. And I think my parents are fantastic for encouraging us to be brave always. When they talked about that as Lodge, as raising your children to be brave, that's definitely something like, yes, absolutely, be brave. And I think I see a lot of women, hear stories about women who, you know, didn't feel comfortable speaking up. And in my mind, it's like, why not? Like, yes, you're in an uncomfortable situation, but how can you handle that and make your situation again? And then be proactive in that way. Like, be able to find your voice in that way. It's a better word for than proactive. Yeah, so it's important, I think, to never, there's gonna be situations where you find yourself that you're like, this is not okay, I don't like it, it's okay to leave. If you feel like it's a situation where you're like, I really want more and I'm not getting what I need, why not say it? Like, just, it's easier said than done, but I think once you start practicing that way of working and having relationships, you end up being so much happier, and everything just is, it's just, I love it. I love life right now. I feel like I've been doing that solidly now for a few years, and it's been nothing but positive results, so that's my big thing. And I think Dawsons Lodge really pushed that home as well, which is what I liked the most about it. Yeah.
Did you set out to have mostly female employees in your business?
No, I mean, I have to admit most of my friends are women, so that kind of stemmed from that. But there's also a lot of mamas. I mean, there's a lot of mamas that they're awesome people in the industry that they can't be in it full time anymore, because childcare stinks. Like, it's expensive. So that kind of happened, and I have to admit, when I first brought on a sweet man named Tim Reifsteck, I think he was the first male on the team, but he's so nice. He's like the nicest person ever. And he came recommended from somebody else. And part of me was like, oh man, no, not longer just all women, but you're really good. Like, you're going to be really good. And he is. He's such a great he's such a consumer friendly, like, amiable person. He's a super geek, so he just does super well. And it's since then, like, what I've always been is focused on, like, are you good as a person, as an individual? Like, how good are you at being sales and knowledge, and how passionate are you? It just happened to be that women were the main people that came up to me, or that I reached out to. Even the men that I reached out to, they referred me to other women. So it just was interesting how that happened. I think that speaks to how the industry is unbalanced in regards to maybe women do need more money than men right now because they're not being paid enough. So, you know, not only is it just economically something that's growing for me just because of the general need of people needing money, but women in particular. Yeah.
Make it a point to talk about your support of local businesses through your work. Tell me about that.
Oh, like, you mean like the people that I support, or the local business?
You support, yes.
Yeah. So, New Seasons, which, even though
they've gotten a good amount of plugs in this interview over there.
They were really good.
Hopefully, they're compensating you well for this.
Actually, no. I mean, in the long term, I guess they are, but they're amazing. Greg Ryder and Honor are awesome people. And there's an example of two men that just were like, she knows what she's doing. This is great. She can handle it. She knows what's, stewards aren't complaining, so let's give her more business. Like, in the end, it comes down to the individual and how well they're doing. And I really appreciate that. In regards to other businesses, I love Park Avenue, what Stacy and Neil are doing. I mentioned Weiser's before. These retailer, Mom and Pop, oh man, Talina and Dan, they're Sweet Peas and a Half. Like, I love, that's another really great woman to interview if you want to interview. Talina's awesome. She has a long time in this industry. I know I'm forgetting somebody. Zupans has been really nice to work with as well. I really appreciate Gina. She got me connected with Lytle Barnett, who's been a pleasure to work with as well. Andy's another awesome human being.
They're making new champagne or sparkling wine.
Yeah, sparkling wine. Yeah, I know.
I almost said it.
I know. I was like, it's okay. It's hard not. It's really good though, so it's hard not to talk about that. Rocco's been supportive since day one. I should have included them in that first list. They're really, really important to me. Roland and Corby have been supportive since absolutely day one, and then Cody from Purple Hands. I've been helping him connect people too. He's also really sweet. These people are all like the common thread again. Is just they're good people. They're really, really good people. Like Roland and Corby in particular have been extra supportive and giving people to me, and then more business and stuff. So that's been awesome. Yeah.
You also support some causes with your business as well.
Yeah, I really think that's important. So because of my son, since he has Down syndrome, I was on the co-leader of Gigis Playhouse, which is going to be a Down syndrome achievement center. So they're going to offer free therapeutic and educational services for children with Down syndrome, their families, and our community. So it's an awesome program. It's national. It's actually international now. They have these achievement centers all over, and there's none, as far as I know, there's still none on the West Coast, I think, except for down in San Diego. And it's just, it's incredible. I mean, that's one of the things that I wish I had as a mother of a child with Down syndrome. There's just a place to go to, or a child with special needs in general. Like, it's a place to go to where you know it's going to be great. Like, they're always the odd person out. And in a Southwest Community Center, we take him to community center for classes and stuff, and he's always the odd kid out. He's always the one that's a little bit slower or different. And I love that there's going to be a place where that's not the case, where he's going to be, accepted for exactly who he is. Right off the bat, so you don't have to worry about like other kids being nice. That for me is it's a big worry. It's gonna be tough. So it's really I believe in that foundation completely, and I love that. I've been asked a lot, is it just for Down syndrome kids? And it won't be. If you have a child that wants to come, come. Why not? I don't see why not. So I really appreciate that about Gigis Playhouse. And there's nothing really on the west side, the southwest side in particular. So the goal is to find a place in Tiger, like right off of I-5. I think that's still the goal. I stepped off being a co-leader because I was too much on my plate. You can imagine. So last summer I was like, I love you guys, peace out. I'll do this one gala a year and that'll be it. So that's happening April 26th at Cooper's Hall, and I'm in the middle of getting donations and trying to get that ball rolling. I still need 2 more chefs to cook, because it's going to be a really awesome team of chefs. Benjamin Bettinger and Aaron Barnett from St. Jack, Cheryl Walker-Hauser, Daniel Shoemaker from Teardrop is going to donate the cocktail. Thanks, he's good. So just all these people are, Jasper Shen from XLB is right. He's great too. And then of course Cooper's Hall team, like Keith Morris is awesome. It's thanks to him that it all happened really last year, because he headed the chefs group, and I was like, okay, great, I don't have to worry about food now. You guys are good. We're good. Let me know. I have connection. Tom owns Pacific Coast. Maybe we can get you introduced, and Tom was awesome. Really took care of that. David Namarnik from Pacific Coast Foods. So David's Sweet Pea automatically donated a lot of the produce and stuff for that. So the first gala we did was, we raised $40,000, and the costs were right around $5,000, which was awesome. And it was all thanks to people donating their time, food and wine being donated, all the auction items being donated. Like, we really worked people. Tucker, who does gala stuff, he was our auctioneer, and he rocked it. He's such a good auctioneer. I had friends from my kids' preschool. My daughter goes to a co-op preschool, and so those mamas and dads came over and were just like, sweet, let's check in people, let's do this, let's analyze. It's just again being this hub and just asking people hey, can you help me? And they all did that. So Gigis Playhouse is my main one, but Andy Lytle invited me to the Children's Cancer Association, which I think is amazing what they're doing. Everything what they're doing is incredible. That's on a whole other level. In regards to Didnt fundraising, but I'd love to help them out. Who else? I know there's another one I'm missing, I feel like. That might be it for right now, I feel like. So for schools, actually the schools, that's it. So Gabriel Park Preschool, and then I'm helping out with Markham. My daughter's going to go to Markham this fall, so I'm already helping them out with their auction this year to get wine connections. Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of boredom. You don't have a lot of downtime where you're just sort of sitting around thinking.
No, I probably should use more of that, but I do this last weekend I did an early birthday celebration, so I find snippets, and then my husband and I, we're really big planners, if you can't tell. So we already have like through August these like long weekends together, and I'll be saying, I'm sorry, I'm not working. Like I did this last weekend. I was like, emergency only. Love you guys. There's a 4-page document of like what to do and how problem solving. Please refer to that before calling me. And no, nobody had any problems, which that was great. Just a couple texts about like, oh, by the way, here's my receipt. And like, great, forward it to me. Well, done. So yeah, I make sure that there's playtime. Like once a week, I try to go out with friends just to catch up with that. Because I'm efficient and organized, I can do that. I can make that. I can find that time. Being efficient, organized is huge. I think, in being able to have a successful business where it's balanced, where you're not doing work all the time, so you can donate more time and be a mom and all this other stuff. Yeah. So
Margaux & Co is still pretty brand new. You've already expanded and you've already diversified a bit.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's next? What do you see as you look ahead for your company?
I'd love to just keep expanding the team and keep finding more areas that have a need for people like my team. It's pretty simple, but in a good way. I'd love to get to a point where I'm making and earning enough that I can travel to Italy again, go back to where I love about wine, and maybe take some staff with me or something. You know, like do something where it's an incentive. I don't know. That would be like a long time from now that I'd have to make really good money for that, or figure out how to get people to pay for that. Figure that out. I think there's educational things that I can tap into. Anyway, I really want to help the education process, and help people get more educated and help them on their journey. I would really like to do that. So Margaux & Co is a focus. Continuing expanding with the focus on education. Yeah. Let's see.
Tell me about the Oregon wine industry as you've seen it from when you got into it to now. What has changed about Oregon wine?
Oh, diversification and consolidation all at once. Like, so many more options, which I love, but much more competition. I feel like when I was a sales rep, I started sales in like 08, I think, 08, 09, and it was way more amiable. There wasn't as many big players. Lemo was always salary paid, so you weren't having this intense pressure of commission-based sales, which I really appreciated. You could see the sales reps when they were stressed and they were being paid commission. They're just like, my kid needs braces. Like, let's help me out. That stinks. So it's you see a different drive on that aspect. It was always really friendly. And I'm helping Gregory Kent too, starting this month with a little bit of sales. Like, I have 15 accounts for our own street wine company. Just because I figure, well, I'm seeing these people a lot, I might as well just sell some wine on the side. Once again, adding a little bit more to my plate, but in a good way, because it's overlapping. And I really do love sales. So it's been interesting to get into that game. Like, I've only been to it 3 weeks, and it's different. Like, the sales reps are different. There's a lot less familiar faces in regards to sales reps on the street. I'm seeing a lot more sloppy sales reps, like people that just don't check their backstock or returns regularly. I'm like, how could you not? It's like 101. Go to account, you service them. That means checking their backstock and checking returns and checking out with the buyer and making sure you make FaceTime with the buyer. Like, I'm hearing stewards tell me how frequent it is that reps don't, touch base with them because they're so busy. They're going in and out. And they don't have time. They have like a million accounts and like traffic sucks. So you have to book it to the next account. And I get that pressure, but that's not good training. That's sad to see. I think a decrease in regards to quality of service. That really bums me out. But I don't know, maybe I help out with that too. I don't know. We'll see.
So solve one problem at a time.
I know. Service to me is so important. So it's hard to see that and not be like, you can go to where it takes like an extra minute. Why not? Yeah.
What about as you look ahead for Oregon wine? What do you see? We're in 2020 now. So what does the Oregon wine industry going to look like in 2030?
It's a great question. I was thinking about that because I know that was one of the questions. It can go in so many different directions. I think it's going to be inevitable that more money is going to come into it in regards to outside influence. But I do think Oregon will always have its heart of being farmers and being people that really care about the land. What Mimi Castillo's doing. It's really interesting to see the natural wine movement. I don't know if that's going to continue necessarily in the way that it was, but I do think it's opened the door and the questions of like, what are you putting in your wine, which I think is a good question. I've always loved Rich Vineyards for putting ingredients on the label. I'm assuming it's costly and there's a lot of government related / TTB related, reasons as to why wineries don't put ingredients on the label. But to me, it's like, man, if you really are like natural and or like want to be transparent, put ingredients on the label. Would really like to know the answer to that question as to why it's not more commonplace. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Where I think transparency is more important in the wine industry more than ever. I think there's awesome people moving to town that could really help boost the quality here, but they have to be given a chance, which means pay has to be increased in the industry. And I know it's easy to say, oh, people should be paying more, but how do you do that? That's a great question. Like, if you have to increase cost and increase, the end note is consumers pay a little bit more, but everyone benefits because we're all getting service better, and then that's a good endpoint. That's okay. We shouldn't be afraid of it. Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who wanted to be you or to join the industry in some way?
I say don't be me, because you should be yourself. My mom was always really good about that. I would always tell her, like, I want to be like you as a mother, and she'd be like, no, you're going to be better and you're going to be really good. Like, it's going to be fine. You be your own mother, and I do think that's important. It's good to have people that you look up to, but you find it your own way, which I think is really important. And just taking the time to find out who you are, and taking that time to, which I realize is also a luxury, but in college, you have lots of time. I mean, I remember having way more time in college than I did now. Man, I wish I had done some of this thinking back then, but I do think, hopefully, if you want something, don't be afraid. Speak up, speak out constantly. Make time for yourself and constantly have balance, but don't be afraid of taking those risks, because you just never know. Or asking those questions, because you never know what will happen. It doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah.
Anything you guys want to ask? Did we cover everything? Okay. We got a question from the audience.
Thanks.
You kind of answered it, but how do you market yourself?
That's a good question.
To your customers, yeah.
I think Instagram's awesome. I think Instagram's amazing, and the hashtags. Once I finally got a hold of that, I was like, oh, sweet, this is good. So it's fun to see some business that way. But once again, going back to those questions and, like, not being afraid and just being open to stuff, going to trade shows and introducing yourself. I think a lot of wineries, especially the local industry, once you make that personal connection with them in person, and then following up with an email, or a phone call, or even another personal visit to that winery, like, that's a huge part of I think, for at least my business, in making those connections and those customers. So once again, it goes down to, like, don't be shy. Kind of go for it. Yeah, but social media for sure helped immensely, and word of mouth and people. Word of mouth, yeah.
Do you have a size in mind for your business?
No, which I probably should. I know I should, but I just don't. I never expected I'd be over 50 people and so many customers within, a year and a half. So I kind of feel like, why should I? Like, even when I was at Margaux and Co, I was a really good sales rep because I didn't like looking at the numbers so much. I like to just do the best I possibly could, but always just kind of keep going. And I think I want to keep doing my business that way, is just keep going. As long as I'm constantly rechecking in with my family and making sure I'm having that balance, we're good. And I'm very lucky I have an awesome support system, so I can do that. Yeah.
So that's all the questions that we have.
Okay.
Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover that we should have covered?
I want to give a big shout out to my sister Lucia, who's awesome, who's at Rocco. So, like, after Lemma closed, that's right. That's kind of part of it. So backtrack to 2018, like, when I started my business, 4 months after that, roughly I think 4 to 6 months after that, my father got sick, my sister got married, my other sister was expecting a baby, my brother was having a baby. So Lemma closed. So it was a lot. So and honestly, like, going back to the other question of how the industry has changed immensely, I don't know if Lemma Wine would have, like, really thrived in this type of industry that we're in now. They really cared about service. They were salary based. It was not commission based. So it wasn't this big rat race kind of fight. And that's a big reason as to why, it's kind of cheesy, but, like, things happen. Like, it's amazing how everything happens for a reason. It was amazing that I was like, okay, I definitely can't come back to the wine company because my son has Down syndrome, so it's not going to happen. Everyone in my family has since found other jobs outside of the industry, except for my younger sister and I. We really like wine, so Lucia and I are still full forged into it, and I love that we are. My sister Marcelita, she's a stay-at-home mama with 2 kids, but not really stay-at-home mama because she's like me. We do like a million. She does all these fundraisers. She's even more on steroids than I am. She's amazing. She helps me every once in a while with Margaux and Co stuff, and I appreciate it because she's a really kick-ass salesman. She's really, I don't know if I can swear. Let's see.
You
anyway,
can absolutely
okay, good.
swear.
She's a really kick-ass salesman. She's really good. Yeah, I feel like I didn't talk about my family, and they're a big reason as to why who I am. So I appreciate them immensely.
Glad we got them in.
Yeah, that's it.
Excellent.
That's all I've been thinking about. That's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your story.
Thank you
and
for
telling us
having
about
me.
Margaux and Co.
Appreciate it.
And we'll let you off the hook.
Thank you.